Today's guest is proof that when you get really good at one thing and then teach others how to do it, you can build a business that changes everything. Jenna Peterson went from real estate agent to 7-figure online sales coach, all by using the power of Instagram. No ads, no fluff, just strategy and soul. In this episode, we dig into the mindset shifts that helped her build a heart-led brand, the habits that turned followers into clients, and the moments she shared online that felt risky but resonated deeply. We also talk about the real stuff, her marriage and being the breadwinner, navigating faith in a world driven by metrics, and what 2 moves from Idaho to California and no back again have taught her about ambition, identity, and quality of life. This episode is for anyone who's ever asked, can my story really make an impact? Because Jenna's answer isn't just yes, it's how. Jenna, welcome to Shift Happens.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited. I don't even know if we actually connected in person, but we were at a mastermind together, and then we have a lot of mutual friends.
Yep.
And I was like, I got to get you on because you're moving back, right?
Yes.
To Idaho.
Yes. I can officially say that now.
My gosh. So a little background, she is from Idaho, moved to California. And how long have you been here in California?
We've been here about 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then now you're officially moving back to Idaho.
Yes, we are.
So I was like, okay, we like connected on Instagram, and we were like, okay, let's be friends. And then we never became friends.
I know.
So I was like, we got to get you on.
Before I go, I know.
Yes.
I'm so glad we made it happen.
I know. I'm so excited. As a business owner, and something that you do really, really well is you have taught so many, hey, get good at one thing, right?
Yes.
Get really good at one thing, and then teach others how to scale it. And that is what you did to build a 7-figure business.
Yeah.
So can you take us into that story from real estate agent to now online sales coach?
Yes. It was not planned. And I think that's something that's important for people to hear is I feel like there's a lot of people now seeing people do well online and coaches succeeding, and they're like, hey, I want to get into that space. But I never looked at it that way. I was a real estate agent selling houses and had 2 under 2. I just had a newborn baby. I literally was breastfeeding him through the real estate classes and like hiding under the camera. And I started doing my first couple of transactions, and I'm like, this isn't going to work. I can't be out and gone all day long and at these open houses and cold calling people. Like, I need to find a different way to do business. And so I just went to Instagram, what I knew, and I started posting, and I think I had 3,000 or 4,000 followers at the time, and just started doing my thing on Instagram and taking my viewer along for the journey. And it started to turn into people reaching out, wanting to use me as their agent. And long story short, about a year into it, I had more business than I could handle, and a lot of people around me saying, hey, how are you doing this? How are you generating leads off of social media? And so it was a very natural transition for me. I was still doing real estate full time and taking coaching clients on the side and teaching them, hey, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to change. Here's the kind of posts you should be doing. And that was like really the beginning of the coaching journey for me.
Wow. And you have mentioned that you don't use ads.
I've never used ads
right?
before.
So what mindset shift did you have to apply when making content creation to make it feel like less of a hustle? Because wow, it can really burn you out.
It totally can. And it's crazy. I was just looking back. I think it's been 7 or 8 years that I've posted every single day. Like I haven't missed a day.
Wow.
And I know it's really wild to think about, but I would say that if I always say this to my students, if business isn't fun, you're not going to keep doing it. And so I had to find ways to keep it fun and lighthearted. And I bring in my family a lot to my content because that is fun for me. So at first my husband was very iffy about getting into the content game.
As most guys are.
Right. But it grew on him, and he started to realize how much it lit me up, but also the effect that it would have on our family. And so he became more on board or was behind the scenes helping me with it. And so I think that was a huge shift that happened for us was, okay, this doesn't have to feel like work. We can have fun with it. My kids have totally been on board. And so, yeah, that was a big like shift that we had to make to stay consistent with it.
Wow. So what's your strategy? Like, do you do batch content?
We
Or
do. So we
okay.
have it down to a science now where for the first several years, I did not have a strategy at all. It was just every single day I was figuring out something to post,
Yeah.
and it kind of what felt organic in the moment. Now, my husband and I have a shared photo album, and essentially that album is filled with just hundreds of like different videos and B-roll and stuff. And so
Yeah.
if he's recording on his phone or mine, it doesn't matter. It'll just go in the shared folder. And then I'll post, typically I'll do it the night before because I don't post it, but I'll schedule it. That way I can be fully present today in this podcast, or I can do life with my
Yeah.
kids, and I'm not worrying about what I have to post that day.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of people will be like, okay, I want to start on social media. And what's the first thing that they think of? Making content and showing your face.
Huge for people.
Like they feel like all of a sudden they're awkward. They feel like they have to be perfect. What would you say to someone that's like, I'm going to start, I'm freaking out, this is awkward. Like, what would you say? Like, okay, what are some practical tips?
Yeah, practical tips. I think the biggest thing is, first of all, starting. And if you are struggling so hard with showing your face, maybe first try recording yourself and posting something to just friends or just a certain amount of people, or go live with no audience. Like you can literally go live on Instagram by yourself to nobody.
Oh,
There's
I
a
didn't know
feature.
that.
You can change the audience. I used to do this kind of stuff because I would be shaking. Like, I know it doesn't
Really?
seem that way now, but I would be shaking, sweating, showing up, to a live or
Wow.
an Instagram video. And so I just started to do it to a very small audience. I would do maybe a Zoom call with a couple of agents, and I really kept things very intimate for a while. And then it started to grow. Now, a couple other things that I share a lot is like reps. You just have to get out there. And if you scroll back to my first reel, I still remember it. It is so bad. I'm pointing to the words and it doesn't match what the music's saying at all. Like I didn't know how to edit, but I left it up there because that's the reality. Like you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
There's a phrase I always say, make content that embarrasses you tomorrow. Like post content, it's going that you have that expectation. It's going to embarrass you later, but that's because you're just getting better at it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you said, when you scroll down and you have those first videos, you're cringing, right?
Yes.
But it's in that is going to make you better each and every day.
Exactly.
We all start somewhere. And I think so many people, they get intimidated by follower count.
Yep.
Or the quality of a video. And they're like, could never be me. I'm never going to get those followers. I'm never going to get that engagement. But you're never going to get it if you never try.
Exactly.
If you never put yourself out there.
And I love how Gary Vee, he does talk a lot about like the power of one. And I don't like to mislead people by saying you're going to post one video and go viral overnight. But the reality is you have more chances to have that happen to you if you just keep posting. And really, honestly, one video has changed a lot of my students' pages. So
yeah. I've actually heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah.
What is one tool or habit that has had the biggest ROI for turning engagement into leads?
Oh, that's a really good one. One tool, I would say, well, I think stories are underrated for a lot of people who are getting started. They're so focused on what they need to post to their feed to gain new eyes. And that's great. A lot of people I work with get all these new eyes and they've got their reels down, but now they're not taking all of those fresh new eyes on a journey. They're not warming them up even more, so to speak. And they just keep pushing out content that is essentially for your top of funnel, like for that first piece of content someone's going to see to bring you into your world. And so I think one of the things that I have done pretty consistently for 7 years now is posted in my stories every day in addition to my feed. And I know it sounds like a lot of work, but when you treat it like a job, it pays like a job. So being in my stories and like you said, showing your face, building that trust is the biggest thing for my conversion. There's so many hacks with keywords and trending audios and all these things that we can use to help us get more leads. But if we want that conversion, we have to build trust with our audience.
Yeah. And building trust is also making you a real human to the people that are following.
Exactly.
You know? And that is also why you're incorporating your family and your husband.
Yes.
And all of those things, real life moments, because it also makes you more credible and trustworthy, right?
Exactly. You nailed it.
And so with that, has there been anything that you've shared on social media that has felt risky, or maybe you were kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I should share that?
Yeah. I think some of the failures, I think it's hard because there's this balance where you want to be seen as this authority figure and credibility you want to build credibility, and you
Yeah.
want people to trust you and pay you for coaching. But then you go, oh shoot, if I show this, like, are they going to discredit me? And
Yes. I felt that. I felt that.
I think it's so helpful though to share both sides of those things, because I think about people that I've invested with or that I've gotten to know or learned from, and they're not perfect. So
No.
I think it's really important to share all of it.
I agree. I agree. Because again, it does humanize us and it
Yeah.
says, oh, okay. Sometimes we look at people and I start idolizing them.
Same.
And then it's like, if they share a failure, you're like, oh, okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And if it makes them feel more normal. And actually, again, going back to the trust factor, you feel like, okay, then I can invest with them.
Mhm. Now, at what point did you and your husband start working together? Because you guys work alongside each other in some capacity, or no? Or is it just content?
Mostly just content.
Okay, just content.
He has helped some of my students when I'm working with like maybe a more intimate student, like a one-on-one, and they have some help. They need some help with finances. He does more of the back end finances in our family and investments.
Mhm.
So he has had a role. We've done a few master classes together. He has been brought into the world in some capacity, but mostly behind the scenes and a lot around home. He helps with a lot of the like, stay-at-home dad lifestyle role model. Yeah.
Well, we are seeing, nowadays women are becoming more of the breadwinners in the family.
Yep.
How did that affect your guys' marriage and dynamic?
Yeah, I think I feel so fortunate because I think there's a lot of people out there who have this misconception, like if the guy isn't making more money, he feels
Like less than inadequate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess I got fortunate in the sense that my husband was always like, if you can make more money than me,
Like, go do it.
Go do it. I'm cheering you on. I'm like, okay. So he just never felt that way. But I think one of the things was we had to identify a role for him, a key role, or else he felt like he didn't have purpose. And once we did that, which was what we found, was he took the money that I made and found ways to multiply it, to invest it, to protect it. So once he realized that that was his role, I think it really helped with his confidence too, because you start to like, feel like, okay, is my identity just being a father, which there's nothing wrong with that either, but he wanted something else. And so that was really helpful to kind of give him this role. But he did, working with your spouse, I think it has its pros and cons. You're going to know this. I know a little bit about your background too. And it's not easy forever. There's a lot of sacrifices that have to be made too. For a long time, we actually shared an office. And so he'd be on calls and I'd be on calls at the same time. And it's difficult.
You're like, I don't recommend.
Actually, yeah. So then the next house we moved into, we had separate offices, and that was really nice. So I think, there's pros and cons to it for sure, but we've worked really well together. And I think the biggest thing, he said this in a recent podcast we were interviewed for, he's like, I just had to get out of her way, like find ways to keep, if that meant bringing me a smoothie or whatever, but like get out of her way, let her do her thing. Cause there was a couple years there where I was really putting in a lot of hours to grow my brand, and he needed to just allow me the space to do that.
What's your guys' story? So you guys met at what age?
I was 15 and he was 21, and he was my waiter at P.F. Chang's.
What?
Nothing happened. For those of you wondering, nothing happened. I'm
so dead.
Left my
Hope
phone
P.F.
number.
Chang's sponsors you guys for a free date night.
We seriously should. Yes. We go back like every time we see one, we like take a picture in front of P.F. Chang's.
So funny.
But anyway, we left I was with my volleyball team, travel volleyball team. We left my number on the receipt and said like, call us. And he called and wanted us to hang out. We weren't allowed to. We were with like our volleyball coach and team mom, and they're like, absolutely no. So we didn't go out, but we just connected on Facebook. And like 6 or 7 years later, I was graduating college. I was 21, and we both reconnected over like basically a Bible verse he posted. And I was like, who is this guy that's good looking and likes Jesus?
Like why am I following him on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm like, who is this? I didn't even know who he was. Like it had been so much time. And so we kind of like did the whole like each other's posts and stuff, and then had this realization, like, I think we actually met in Arizona one time when I was traveling for volleyball and he was going to school. And the story is pretty crazy because we end up chatting for a while. He ends up flying to a wedding that is like right by my hometown, picks me up for a date after like a year of us chatting long distance. He's from Hawaii. So he's living in Hawaii now, and I'm in Southern California where I'm from. And long story short, we meet up, it feels like we've known each other our whole lives. We get together ever since then. But as I'm moving out of my childhood home and moving to Idaho, where we end up both building a life together, I find this phone that I had when I was 15 and I turn it on, have an old charger for it, turn it on and find his phone number in there. I wanted to see if we had any messages or anything just to kind of look back. And his name is saved as my future husband. So it was pretty crazy.
What?
Yeah. It's like I knew.
Wait, okay. So you lived in Southern California. Do you guys just like meet up and then?
He was just going to school in Arizona, but he lived in Hawaii. I lived in California.
Yeah.
After school, he went back home.
Okay.
And we were doing long distance.
Got it.
So yeah, we just happened to ran into each other while I was traveling and he was going to school in Arizona.
Okay. So then how did he get you to Idaho?
This is so random, but his mom grew up there. So he had a lot of family still there, even though they lived in Hawaii. And so when we started talking, he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about going back to school. I want to go to Boise State potentially. And I'm like, where is Idaho on a map? Like, I'm not going there. And he's like, well, if this is ever going to work, like, I'm not moving to California. I will never live there. He lived on an island with like no people around him, very remote, living on the Big Island.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when we finally got together, he's like, well, I don't know how this is going to work because you refuse to move to Hawaii and I refuse to move to California. So we settled on both compromising to Idaho.
Wow. So what was your experience like when you moved to Idaho?
At first, I really didn't like it and I really wanted to move. I think it's such a shock factor. And I think the best word you can describe is feeling like there's no stimulation whatsoever when you come from Orange County and you go to somewhere like Idaho 10 years ago when nobody was moving there. And so it was just very quiet, small town. And I found myself traveling back and forth a lot. But I started to grow a love for it, especially once we had our daughter. And I realized that like there was a different way of life that you just had to appreciate and realize that, it was great. But I do think as far as a business standpoint goes, it was one of the best things that we ever did because we got out of our hometowns. And I say that to people a lot. Not that it's a bad thing if you stay in your hometown, but for us, like it forced us to network with new people, to show up in a different way. We didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
And so I think that did really help both of us be on the same like level with our goals.
Well, bring us into your move from Idaho to California because on social media, you're really open about that. And you believed and believe that God really ordained this move from Idaho to California. Yeah. Especially your husband, you just said, did not want to live in California.
He didn't want to live here. Yeah.
Yeah. So when he got that story.
And when he got the word, so we were sitting at church, even crazier story. We had just finished building because he's in construction. That's his background.
Okay.
He hasn't been in construction traditionally now with my business growing, but he was finishing a job and we were sitting at church and this was the day that we finished building our house and we moved in. We had moved in that weekend. And this home, if you ever saw on social media, if you follow me, it's like 6,500 square feet on over an acre, just gorgeous, everything you could ever want in a home. You'd never want to leave. And a massive guest house with 2 bedrooms. Like we just thought we'd like die here. And he got a word that he's like, I think our family's supposed to move to California. And I'm like, why would you even say that right now? Like, that is so weird. No, like we just ignore it. And so a few months go by and there's just this wrestling. If you're a Christian, if you're a believer, you kind of understand like God's just working on our hearts. Like there's something there. And we're like, what is this? Like, I don't understand what it is because we checked off all of the boxes, what we've been working towards. Like, no, this is it.
Yeah.
Why are we feeling unsettled? And so that unsettledness just kept growing bigger and bigger. We had a couple of trips here, like to see a doctor for his foot. We saw my family. My brother had a baby. So we're out here a couple of times throughout this last year. And we're kind of looking at houses, but thinking, okay, Lord, maybe you just want us to get a second home. Like we're just going to get a beach house or we'll do something smaller. Yeah. And it really didn't feel like any door was opening. We put in offer after offer, full price on homes that were sitting on the market for 80 days and they would reject our offers. Like it made no sense until this home pops up in a neighborhood with families, with kids everywhere in Newport Beach and like the dream neighborhood with an old home, original owner. And we're like, that literally would have been the perfect home for us to come in and like I guess, try this life and like see what God wants us here, but it's pending. Like we missed it. And the last day of our trip, we get a notification sitting at Mexican restaurant off of PCH, can't remember the name. And literally it says, this house is back on market. And we're like, we have to go check it out. So we go look. There are herds of people in this home. Like everyone wants it. And we're like, well, there's no way we're going to get it. Let's just throw our name in the hat, whatever. And so we end up offering less than asking, like the max of what we can spend. But in order to do this, we financially needed to sell our home in Idaho to be responsible. It really felt like we were stretching our price point. And so they end up calling us back and said they got 8 offers. And because we're a family, they want to accept ours. And we're like, oh my gosh, like, are we seriously doing this? But we still have to sell our home. That's probably not going to happen. It probably won't work. We come back home to a lady basically knocking on our door and saying, hey, I would like to buy your home. What is the price?
What?
And she came through and it was exactly what she wanted. And we closed in 14 days, all cash. And we ended up moving. She had been praying for the last year and watching our home be built and said, you thought you were building this house for you, but you're still building it for me.
I have chills.
She had just sold the exact same home with the same like guest house, everything, 2 offices in the front. Like it's so specific to a T. She had just sold that in San Diego and she had owned that home her whole life. She was so sad to sell it. But the Lord's like, there is something waiting for you in Idaho, and all of her kids live in Idaho.
Wow.
She really wanted a place for them to gather and to be together. And so we're both crying because she's so excited. We're like happy for her, but sad at the same time. We're having so many mixed emotions.
I just built this dream house.
Yeah. We didn't want to leave at all, but we really felt like the Lord was calling us to something. And so we got here and we were really upset. I mean, being in Newport Beach, how upset can you really be? Like it's stunning. It's beautiful. We love it here. But we were wrestling for 6 months. We're in a home that's a 1960s original. Things don't work right. You know, there's carpet in the bathrooms. It's like, and the price point is so high that we're like, we don't really feel like we want to spend a bunch of money like we thought we were going to with remodeling. In the same time, God is also changing my heart with my outlook on my business and really asking me to slow down. And I'm like, but Lord, this is the worst time to slow down. Like we're experiencing all these new expenses. Like I need to ramp up. He's like, no, I really need you to slow down. And so I slowed down my business, super intentional with my kids. We were in multiple sports with them this year. We volunteered in the class, like did all the things. But really the reason that God brought us here was to show us how to find peace and to change what we were putting our identities in. And that was the biggest thing, is that we never had peace. On the outside, it looked as if we did because we drove our dream cars and had this dream home and all the things, but we were putting our identity in things that shake, that move, not something that is grounded, which is I'm a Christian, which is my relationship with God. And so I think all of it had to happen. As sad as it is, you know, I get the messages all the time now on Instagram. Are you just regretting selling it? Not for a second, because we can build another house one day. We can do that again, but we can't change the way that we had to go through these experiences to get to where we are now, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
And to feel, and we love it here, but we have community. We have my parents back in Idaho where we really feel like it makes sense for us to live there and then we can come visit here. But, we were searching. We thought that the grass was going to be greener somewhere else. And God so graciously opened that door for us. I think that was the big thing. People are like, but he called you there, aren't you supposed to stay there? I'm like, well, the same God who calls you somewhere can also call you back.
Exactly.
Like it's not, it's not always forever. Sometimes it's just for a season, and trust me, I would love to stay, but it's, we learned, he got through to us in the time that we needed. And we were able to sell our home very quickly again here. And so we really felt like a peace about it.
Alexis here. I'm just popping in to ask you, have you been through something painful and felt like your story could help someone else, but you're not quite sure where to start? I want to help you unpack your journey, find your voice, and turn your story into purpose that heals you and empowers others. Click the link in the show notes below to learn how to start sharing your story with boldness and clarity. And now back to another impactful story.
So what did that decision-making process look like for you and your husband to then put this house, the Newport house, up on the market? Because you just made this big faith leap. This is before God has kind of revealed to you about where you're placing your identity.
Yes.
You do this big leap, you go, you're in this house, you're like, oh, wow, not really what I had expected.
Yeah.
Were you guys both aligned on this?
Extremely. And I think so I actually went through a study, 8-week study. I'm forgetting the gal's name, but it was basically on hearing God.
Mhm.
And I was praying every single day, Lord, I need a sign. I need a sign. I need you to move. I need to hear, like, what are we supposed to do in this? And
Mhm.
I was calling mentors. I was calling pastors, anyone that I could talk to be like, where am I supposed to live? Where am I supposed to live? Like, I was waiting for God to just, like, I don't know,
Yeah.
drop something on my doorstep. And like,
Yeah.
I realized through the whole process that it's not always how he works. He
Mhm.
doesn't always, like, have a flag that is flying across the
One
sky
way or
that
the
says
other,
this is where
too.
you're going.
Exactly.
But we ultimately found this through every conversation. I mean, my husband even met with 2 different pastors. Like, we did not want to disobey God. We're like, if he called us here, we don't want to leave if we're not supposed to be here. But again, after we learned some of those lessons and we started to really understand, like, okay, wait a second, maybe we were placing some of our identity in the wrong things. Following the peace. Like, if it's God's plan for you, typically there's this, it's an unspeakable kind of peace. And
Yeah.
honestly, every time I thought about going back and living by my parents and being down the street in a very simple, modest home, nothing crazy, but just like having that proximity to them and going back to the school system that we had there that kids were plugged into, I just felt that peace. And so I think that's what my husband and I had to lean in on. It really helped that we were aligned in that. I think if we weren't, there's something that I read in the study that says if you feel like the dis-ease, that's probably a yellow light. It means you probably need to hold off, or maybe you need to wait a little bit longer. And so we felt that a little bit too throughout the last 6 months. Like, within the first few months, we started to have some of these thoughts, and we knew we needed to wait a little bit. And now some people might say, like, well, how long are you supposed to wait? Like, it could have been, maybe you didn't give it enough time. But it was an intimate relationship, I would say, with God, where he really made that clear to us that it was, we got what we needed, if that makes sense. And we both had that green light, so to speak, which was the peace. So
Got it. Exactly. And, we've heard it said, yeah, like God is a God of peace, not of confusion.
exactly.
Right. Yeah. And I think that it's easy to look at what other people achieve online, the houses that they live in,
Yes.
where they live, and be like, that's what I want. And then we make it our goal. And then it's so interesting.
I
Sometimes
get
when
that.
you go and you hit that goal, it doesn't really do anything. It's like, oh, okay, well, I hit that goal and there's nothing been added. There's nothing been added. But
could
the
not agree.
lesson is there. But the material, it's all but, I mean, our life is but a vapor, and
Yes.
everything in this life I mean, I don't want to be like, I want to be like, it's all gonna burn, but you know what I
No.
mean? But like legitimately,
It is. Like, you're
it
not
doesn't
taking
matter.
it with you.
That's not what matters.
Yeah.
That is not what matters. And I think what I hear you saying is a safe, secure, peaceful, simple even. And
Simple.
And simple does not mean not successful.
I think there's I think people need to hear that online for sure.
Huge difference. But you are choosing that life over maybe a life that is about hustle and is about image.
Yep. That's
and
exactly
it is about
it.
things.
That's exactly it. And I will tell you, every single person that I looked up to, I mean, most of them either had a home in Newport Beach or lived in Newport Beach. There is nothing wrong with Newport Beach, but just because it's someone else's life or someone else's dream, like, it doesn't mean that it's also right for you too. And I think that's one of the things that I learned is, like, I put these people on a pedestal and saw, okay, I kind of checked the boxes with Idaho. I'm ready to move on to the next thing. Like, I need to be
I need to be up-leveling.
I need to be up-leveling.
Idaho is small beans.
Yes. And that's what was going on in my mind. And God's like, okay, I'm going to open the doors for you guys. I'm going to open them wide open because I want you to see what this entails. And I feel honestly so grateful for the experience, as challenging as it was, like, to go through such a huge shift and
especially
let
with
go.
your kids.
Yeah. And to let
Yeah.
go of, like, so much that we were holding on to. That's something I didn't share, but we sold so many things that we just had recently purchased, and things that were all brand new. Like, cause we had just kind of, we had a full gym set, we had extra trailers, and we had an excavator. I mean, just so many things that we were like, we're just going to get rid of it all. And we've moved here, and then we feel like it's happening again, where we're like, okay, we're gonna even like let go again as we move back. So we're gonna move back to an even smaller home. But I think that there's a lesson there too. It's like what you said, not holding on to some of these material things. And when we are willing and able to do that, I feel like more doors will open too, because we're not holding on to those things, but we have to fall in love with the process, and not just the destination of where we're getting to.
Exactly. To go back to what we were talking about, as well as simple does not mean that you don't have to be successful. You have built a brand and a company over like really talking about how you have made, you've built a 7-figure business, right? So I think that, and I'm going to speak primarily to like Christians or that I think we can get hung up and say, oh, well, that I don't want to like strive after success or after making a lot of money. Aren't we supposed to be humble? Aren't we supposed to be even, isn't it easier for a camel to enter the eye of a needle, than a rich man to enter heaven? Right. And so we can say all these things. What would you say to that? What would you say to someone that's maybe pushing back on?
Because I can completely relate, and I have, the Holy Spirit convicts me in different ways. I'm very in tune with the Holy Spirit. And so I think you have to lean into that. I think there are certain people who probably can't share that stuff, who probably feel really convicted by that and feel like, oh my gosh, this is boasting. But the Holy Spirit has made it really clear that I need to share some of these things with people, because I am not able to reach certain people that I have been able to bring to church or to bring to their faith, because I was in these certain rooms. I was sharing my income. I was sharing things that were working. And now, again, that doesn't mean that everyone should be sharing their income online. And I do feel, by the way, my pastor said it on Sunday best. It's like things that I said 2 years ago, I may not even agree with now. Yeah. And I agree with that too.
That's true.
There are ways that I showed up and shared my income that I don't do anymore. I don't, because I do feel like maybe it was a little too much in someone's face or something like that. But now I really feel like I do need to qualify myself. I do need to make sure that people understand that I have had success online. I do know how to market. I do know how to help them in a certain way. But I would say, if you're struggling with that, like pray about it. And I think you'll get a piece again on like, what are you like supposed to share and maybe not. And again, God needs people to be in business, and he needs women who are going to be leaders in their industries and that can donate to the kingdom. Like I struggled growing up with a church that, again, not necessarily one particular person told us, but we heard over and over like that to hide your money and to not showcase any of it, and to really, it's almost like if you were poor, it was like almost celebrated in a really bizarre way.
I totally get that. And
I just don't agree with it, because we've been able to watch families and, I don't like to share about all the ways in which we've been able to give. I really don't share a lot about that publicly, but I know that just from our own experience, like how can this be a bad thing when we're able to help people in like different financial situations over the last couple of years that we would never have been able to do if we weren't making money. So it's a difficult topic to talk about, because there's so many various opinions on it. But here's what I'm going to say. I'll end it with saying this. God cares about your heart. He's after your heart. And where's your heart? And if your heart is to brag to someone, to showcase like, look at my car, look what I did, and blah, 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 because you're just trying to show off, like it's pretty obvious.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And it is the love of money that is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
Not money in and of itself.
And my husband always says it's neutral. He's like, it's a tool. People put so much emotion around money. And I think that's a problem in our society today, because they're the ones that are making it something. Whereas we've really trained ourselves to see it as a tool, as like, okay, this is a vehicle to, putting our kids in this specific school or being able to provide for these health things or whatever. But it's really, it's not good or bad.
No, I agree. How do you define success now?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, other than the fact that having a relationship with the Lord is number one. But after that, I would say for us, it's time and experiences now. And we never, I would be laughing if I heard myself 2 years ago saying this on a podcast. I'd be like, having a G-Wagon and your dream car and all these things. Like I was chasing the like vision board that I had created for myself. But after achieving those things, I have realized that what I truly was actually after was having options, having the option to take on a client or to not, having the option to work late this night or not having to do it. And I think it goes back to having that freedom of time. And freedom of location with our family has been huge too. Like we have family in different states. We want to be able to go back and forth and visit and not be chained to like just one spot. And so, yeah, we just see success in a different way now. And it's easier to achieve that, I think, than people realize. Like if you look at what you're making on a month, or I'm sorry, what you're spending on a monthly basis, which my husband does a lot of work around this, and make sure that what you're making is more than that. Like essentially that is what we were after. And I think there's, these arbitrary numbers we throw out. Like I want to make $100,000 in a month because it sounds cool, but it's like, is that is that actually what is needed for, and will that be fulfilling for you based on your goals? So when the vision is clear, when the vision of what you're going after is clear, then the decisions become easy.
What would you say to someone that is like, okay, I'm starting zero. Starting social media from zero. Yes. Social media from zero. I am trying to build, a business. I want to, help people online. Like I want to do what you do.
Okay.
What would you say it would be like the main three to five things that they need to do to start?
I think the number one thing, I kind of said it earlier, but if you treat it really seriously like a business, I feel like people, I don't know what it is, but I've worked with enough students to notice they're like, yeah, it's just social media. Like they don't take it as seriously as it can be. And so they'll post like, here and there. And they're like, I'm starting this new business on social and I posted. And I mean, I've even watched my husband doing this right now. Like he's so consistent and then he'll like not post for a few days. And I'm like, wait, you can't do that. Like you have to commit to a schedule. And so I would say the first thing is commit to a schedule and go all in on it. Like do it for 90 days and see what happens. I'm not saying you can't take a day off, but for a period of time, like treat it like a job. And one of the ways that this can help you with is creating a schedule in advance. So you're not just guessing what you need to be posting every day. Like maybe you have a plan for a week or two in advance. The second one I would say is getting around people who are doing it. So like whether you're in a mastermind or you're being coached or you're just, you have friends that are in it, like surrounding yourself with people who are already winning in that space, you pick up on so much. And that's why I'm a big fan of masterminds, because all of a student shares something that's working and the other student's like, okay, I've never heard of that before. Like I'm going to start doing that.
Yeah.
So it's really powerful. And the third thing I would say is put blinders on, because the biggest mistake that people make is they compare themselves to someone's chapter 20 and they're on chapter 1. Like you can't compare yourself to, the guest you just had in this room. Like if I were to compare myself to someone like her, she's been creating content and showing up for probably 8 years longer than I have. Like I can't compare myself to someone else. I can look up to them and aspire to be like them or learn from them, but I can't dim my light because someone else's might be shining brighter.
No, exactly. It's so easy to play the comparison game.
Yes.
What would you say to someone that's like, okay, so now I'm posting consistently. How am I to monetize?
Yeah. I think some people make the mistake of monetizing too soon, where they start this account and they're like, I need to start making money today. I have seen people do that really well, but I do think that there's like a period of time. Even one of my most recent students she opened up a brand new account in December. She posted for 3 months, just content she had a free offer that she would give people, but she never asked for money. And then after the 3rd month, so about 90 days, she started selling a digital guide, and she did about over $10,000 in that initial launch on her guide, and then has launched a couple various since then and did about the same amounts each time, and doing so well. Stay-at-home mom, 6 kids, can't work anywhere. And I am just so proud of her. But she is a perfect example of like, okay, she did start from scratch. She started the new account, but that girl did not miss a day. I think she posted twice a day at least on her feed. And she warmed her audience up a bit. So they were able to kind of get to know the thing that she was going to be selling before she actually started selling it, which was huge.
Yeah.
And then for someone who maybe has like, again, they're starting from scratch, they're just getting started, I also watched someone recently start a new account. I didn't work with him specifically, but he created a guide and started selling it right away and did really well. But he had a very long track record of doing something on a different platform and kind of
Got
like
it.
brought it over,
Got it.
if
Okay.
that makes sense. And so I
Yeah.
think it
So-
really depends on like your situation. His experience had been on Etsy, and so now he's teaching people how to monetize on Etsy, but marketing it on Instagram.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
he had the credibility. So I think if you have the credibility of what you've been doing for a while, like you don't need to wait to start monetizing.
No, absolutely. I
Yeah.
hear that. I know that one of my pitfalls with Shift was when I was doing a digital course was people knew me so well for design and branding and then or design and fabrication that all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to do a digital course. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
it can be like a shock
Yes.
to your audience when they only know you for these certain things.
Yep.
You do have to warm them up so that they are prepared for what you are going to offer. And then they're more likely to purchase from you because now they feel bought in. But it's like all of a sudden, oh, okay, she's just doing a course. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it comes out of nowhere.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly. What part of your story, professionally or personally, right, could help other people that maybe you didn't realize, and that in the sharing, it wasn't just like I'm just sharing to sharing, but it also helped heal you.
Ooh. I think there's a consistent theme that I share about not giving up. And it's so ironic because there have been so many moments in this journey where I have set a specific standard for myself or a goal and I don't hit it and I'm, my engagement's down or whatever it may be. And I feel like it has actually kept me staying consistent and keep showing up because that message that I share is resonating so much with other people. They're like, I was about to give up, or I actually stopped posting last week, but because you shared this, like I'm coming back on, or I'm showing up. And I get those messages all the time, and the algorithm is always changing. And lately it's been so difficult to get views on Instagram. And there's been so many times where I'm like, why am I even doing this still? Like I'm just going to stop. And then I share that message of like me basically talking to myself, but I'm sharing it to everyone else. It's almost like what I want someone to tell me. And I get the best feedback from it. And so I just know that that's a sign like, okay, Jenna, you have to be that example for other people. And you're not alone in this, right? Like that's what's so cool about social media. Like we get to be social with other people and realize that, okay, you're not the only person going through this. And usually when, like kind of to your point, when you're going through something like that, there's usually a bigger reason for it. Like you get to leverage that to be an example. So
Exactly. And in sharing how you feel, right, it helps other people. Then it also helps yourself.
it does every
right?
time.
Every time that we're open and transparent with our story and our struggles and our mess, there's relief. There's freedom.
So much. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's like our chains just fall off.
They do.
They don't hold power anymore.
Yep.
And I think that's just like such a beautiful thing. And we can say that in business. We can say that in our personal life.
Yep.
We can say that as being mothers, friends. It's the more that we do share and the more that we are open, the more healing takes place. And ultimately, like my hope and goal is, to bring glory to God in the sharing. Right. So
Exactly.
I'm so thankful that you got to come and that I got to meet you in person and finally, whenever you're out in California.
Oh,
come
I
say
will
hi,
say
girl.
hi, and we'll be back often. How can you not stay away?
Yes, right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Shift Happens. You are the reason I started this podcast. I hope it finds the ears and hearts of those who need it so that you know your voice matters and you are reminded that someone needs to hear your story. As always, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And I'll see you next week.